Hello and welcome. I have a little concept I've been working on which I found interesting, so I thought I'd share. Pretty much, I've gone through the most dominant Survivor players across a 3 season span in search of who's really the most consistent person to have ever played the game. And if a player's played more than 3 seasons, I'm going to be using their most dominant 3 seasons and scrapping their worst performance. There are actually 30 players who have played Survivor on 3 different occasions, so we actually have a decent pool of people to look at. And there are the usual suspects up in the top 10, some of them, but there is also some surprises, so I guess we'll see how we go. To begin with, the honourable mentions, who have just narrowly missed out on the top 10, we have, with an average placement of 7th, finishing 1st, 19th, and 1st again. This one's pretty obvious. Tony, one of the greatest players of all time. It's interesting that he's won twice and he still isn't in the top 10 for most consistent over 3 seasons, so that surprised me. And our last 2 honourable mentions, who are tied with the average placement of 6.7, we have, having placed 5th, 7th, and 8th, Andrea, and having placed 8th, 15th, and 11th, Tyson. Oh, I made a mistake. And having placed 8th, 1st, and 11th, we have Tyson. Both of those have narrowly missed out on the top 10. In 9th place, we actually have a 3-way tie, which makes this probably more of a top 11. But in equal 9th place, with an average placement of 6.3, we have, having placed 5th, 12th, and 2nd, Coach, which is a surprise to me. Finishing 2nd, 12th, and 5th, we have Colby, and having finished 10th, 1st, and 8th, we have Jeremy Collins. So I think it's interesting to think Colby and Coach have the identical stats as each other, and Jeremy also sneaks in. And now in clear 8th place, and this may be a bit of a surprise, it was a surprise to me, with an average of 6th place, we have finishing 8th, 4th, and 6th, Rupert. I don't know either. I did not expect him to have had such good finishes. He's always been kind of one of those characters you've known as a really big, memorable persona, but not necessarily a strong game player. In 7th place, we have averaging placement of 5.7, having finished 1st, and 15th. And there's no surprises that that's Sandra, the first 2-time winner and another one of the greatest players of all time. And also notably, her 15th place finish is the worst individual finish that anyone in the top 10 have had in one of their 3 seasons. Having finished 7th, none of the 2-time winners are in the top 5, which is, once again, quite surprising. In 6th place, with an average placement of 5.3, having finished 11th, 1st, and 4th, we have Sarah Lacina. So her first game was her worst in Cagayan, and then finishing with a win and a 4th place. So she actually finishes higher than Tony, even though he's won twice and she's won once. Here's a fun fact. Every season that Sarah and Tony have played together, one of them's won it. And she still finishes higher than Tony just because Tony's 19th really drags him down. In 5th place, with an average placement of 5, finishing 2nd, 9th, and 4th, we have Aussie Lust, another player that's very strong in challenges, not renowned for his strategic game as much, but you can see that strong challenge prowess can carry you quite far in the game, obviously. In 4th place, with an average placement of 4.7, finishing 3rd, 2nd, and 9th, we have Amanda. Still not having won Amanda, but she's very consistent in the top 10. Never placed outside of the top 10 in her Survivor career. And I wouldn't be surprised if she was to return again in the future. For second place, we actually have a tie. So equal second and third. With an average placement of 4.3, we have placing fourth, third, and sixth, Sari. And having placed 10th, second, and first, Boston Rob. So I don't think there's any surprises with these guys. These guys are shown to be some of the best players of all time. Sari's actually equal second for consistency across 3 seasons, and she's never won. So that's a bit of a rip-off if you ask me, but would love to see Sari come back and get a win. And the number one survivor across 3 seasons, having averaged third place, finishing 6th, 1st, and 2nd, is Parvati. Another person renowned as one of the greatest players of all time. Can't really say I'm surprised. But her run through Cook Islands, Fans vs Favourites, and Heroes vs Villains is the most dominant, highest placing 3-season stint by a player in Survivor history. Alright, now this is the fun bit. The worst 3-time appearances by Survivor players for placement. Remembering that there's only 30 people that have returned 3 times. Equal 7th worst, we have having averaged a placement of 9.7, finishing 7th, 15th, and 7th, Jonathan Penner, and having finished 1st, 11th, and 17th, Ethan. Now, notably, he's won the game and he's also in the worst average placements across 3 seasons, so he did have a huge drop-off after winning Survivor. Averaging placement of 10th, we've got finishing 4th, 9th, and 17th, Malcolm. I can see him coming back. He seemed a big fan of the game, strong player. I think he'd be... You can tell why people get rid of him early. He's just kind of got everything. Finishing equal 3rd worst survivors of all time for average placement across 3 seasons. Finishing 8th, and 16th, we've got Candace. I don't know why she even came back a second time. And having finished 10th, 8th, and 14th, Joe. Joe reminds me of Malcolm a lot. I think they've both kind of got that charm and physical dominance. Maybe Joe's got slightly less social game, but you can tell why they've had him back. Second worst of all time, averaging 11.7th place, is finishing 5th, 10th, and 20th, Sierra. Another one that she was a decent social game. You can tell why they had her back. She voted out her mum, which was kind of the point of that Blood vs Water season. She didn't provide much on the run back. And the worst survivor of all time across 3 seasons, averaging placement of 13.7th, far and beyond the worst player of all time, is placing 10th, 17th, and 14th, Jeff Varner. Why did he come back a second time? Why did he come back a third time? And aside from verbally nuking his Survivor career the last time he played, he's never finished inside the top 10. I don't really see why he would ever come back again. Some other things worth looking at. I've got a list of people here that had 2 really strong seasons and a bad 3rd season. So if they were to return, they might be able to fix the wrongdoing in their 3rd season. We've got, obviously, Sandra and Tony having both done 2 wins. Sandra finishing 15th in her 3rd season and Tony finishing 19th. If they returned and finished in the top 10, they would easily be right up top of this list. We got Russell Hance finishing 2nd, 3rd, and then 17th. I don't think he's ever going to finish in the top 15 ever again. I mean, people don't trust him. You'd never want him on the you would want him on the show for ratings, but people do not want to align with him. Absolutely no chance. I don't see him progressing in this list. Tina having finished 1st and 4th and then 18th. I think she could realistically come back. She seems keen. She could really push herself up the rankings with another strong game. Amber finishing 1st, 6th and 19th. I don't know if she'd be keen to. I think Survivor's more Boston Rob's thing. And I can't see her pushing that far into the game again if she did return. Aubrey having finished 2nd, 5th and 15th. She could return. I think she'd have a huge target on her back. She's quite renowned as a strong player. And we've also got Colby and Coach, who have both finished 2nd, 5th and 12th. I would love to see Coach come back and have another good game. I'm a huge Coach fan. Colby, I can't see him having too much impact in the future. His first game he finished so high because he was so good in the challenges, and in the second game he finished so high because he was so bad in the challenges. So big tale of two sides on that one. And there were other obvious players that could have had a strong third season, like Parvati if she'd finished 1st instead of 6th, and Rob if he'd finished higher than 10th. But I was kind of focusing on the ones that had a real drop off on their third game. Which two-time player, if they returned, would enter this list? Everyone that finished in the top 6 for Winners at War instantly, if they came back again, they would have some of the strongest top 3 games of all time. Just simply because they've already won a season and then they've finished top 6th. So that's people such as Natalie, Michelle, Ben, and Denise. So to scrap them off the list being the obvious ones, having averaged a placement of 3rd, placing 4th and 2nd, we have Spencer, which is quite surprising given his lack of social ability, having finished 3rd and 4th for an average of 3.5. We have Ty, which is also surprising to me. I didn't see that coming. And having averaged 4.5, finishing 4th and 5th, there is Keith, another player who's a little bit absent for the social game. People that I don't know if they could make another run through Survivor, but they wouldn't be voted out as social threats, so maybe that would help them. And finally, I've got some miscellaneous things that I found which might be interesting. The first thing I noticed is that several people have strung together 2 really strong seasons, but when you get that infamy of being a strong Survivor player, it's really hard to execute on a 3rd strong season. Most people that have played 4 seasons have one season where they've just gone bottom 15 and just had an awful game. You almost need that so that people forget how good you are. Amanda actually has the highest career placement of anyone playing 3 or more seasons if we're factoring in 4th and 5th times. So career placement average, playing more than 3 seasons, Amanda is top of the table, which is surprising to me. Amanda, Andrea and Jeremy are the only 3 players to never finish below 10th place, having played 3 times or more. The best worst placement for a player to play 4 or more times is Aussie with a 12th place finish, and the best worst placement for a player that's played 3 times is 8th place by Andrea. Another surprising thing here is more people have actually never won Survivor who are in the top 10 for average placement than people that have won Survivor. So I think that shows once you win a game, people really do start to hunt you from the next time you play. And that's another reason why it makes it so hard to enter this list. And another one just for fun, the worst 2-time player for placement in the history of Survivor is having finished 18th and 18th or last and last. Francesca. So if she really wanted to push for the worst 3-time player in history, she could play another season, hopefully with Philip, and score another 18th place and be far and beyond the worst player to take that title from Jeff Varner. That's really all I got for you at the moment. I hope it was interesting. If you learnt something, like the video, and yeah, enjoy.
And then I cue the strings. Ready? And dee, dee, da, da, dee. And that means I want a little crescendo and then a decrescendo. Da, da, dee.